My life up to this point has been struggling and deciding what paths God has wanted me to take. I've struggled spiritually to find a comfortable spiritual home, living amidst the extreme and brutal violence of my city, Philadelphia. Every day I see on the news all the violent acts that happened the night before. It can be very hard to stand up and be a person of faith anywhere, but especially in a place where there is so much negativity and turmoil. However bad it may be, the violence that occurs in my city has changed me spiritually into the person that I am today. Some key points in my life up to this point have been my interactions with violence and how I deal with it. When I was young, my mom didn't let me or any of my siblings play with any guns or weapons. We didn't have Mortal Kombat or any of the other popular video games. She explained to me that people actually died from weapons in our city and that they were nothing to play with. I still didn't understand at that time. My mom had created a figurative fence to guard me and my siblings from violence in our world. She did an excellent job of guarding us from the news and explained to us that there were people out there who intended to do harm to other people. However, when I went over to my friend's house, I did indulge in several hours of Mortal Kombat. I was very curious and wanted to play it, and didn't pay much attention to what my mom had said. One day, however, my thoughts radically changed. I came home from school on a normal day and glanced at the TV. On the screen was a picture of a 6-year-old African-American girl who had been shot and killed the night before. I realized that she was the same age as me. I realized at this moment how real violence was and how quickly it could affect me. I thought about her family members and how they must have felt. I also thought it could have been a picture of one of my friends on the TV screen, or maybe even mine. At this point, I felt the fence that my mom had worked so hard to keep up come crashing down. I quickly decided that I wanted nothing to do with violence, and that I didn't want it to ever affecting my family or I. I continued growing up and had no interaction with violence. I was attending a Quaker school and thought I would be immune to the violence because I was at a Quaker school. I felt very safe, and everything seemed to be going on fine. People continued to die in Philadelphia due to gun violence, and honestly, I wasn't that concerned. As long as my family and I were okay, everything was fine. At 12 years old, I completed the 7th grade and was going to continue my education in another school. I realized at this point that I wanted to become a Quaker because I felt so strongly about being anti-violent. I also felt that if I was a Quaker, I would be immune to any violence that occurred simply because I was a Quaker. Then the Iraq War started when I was 14. I saw the missiles the tanks shot and watched them blow up more than one building at a time. People began talks about the draft, and I began attending conferences and meetings about being a conscientious objector. I was worried at that point about being drafted for the war when I was 18. At this point, I had realized violence was real and alive in my world. Not only was the fence that previously guarded me from violence down, but I felt as though I could really see the brutal effects of violence, and that its impact and the influence was standing right in front of me, looking me in the eye. When I was 16, violence took a step forward and hit me hard. On a rare day when I was not with my brother, he was jumped on the way home from school, only a minute from my house. This was my first real instance with violence. I couldn't believe that this had happened. I thought that no violence would happen to me and that I wouldn't be affected because my family was good and we went to church. I really felt angry at first and guilty that I wasn't with my brother to protect him. This was a random act and he never saw these kids or did anything to deserve this from them. After this incident, I realized there has to be change to control this violence. I realized that just worrying about me and my safety was not the right thing to do. I realized that my brothers and sisters who were being beaten up, mugged, and gunned down needed help. If they were not okay, then I shouldn't feel okay. I decided I was going to give this up to God. I didn't know the answer to this problem, but I was hoping that God could help us out. After this incident, violence continued to make its presence known to me, and this time I was the victim. A friend and I were on the train riding home from school when two guys came up to us. After they tried to start a conversation, I knew that something was wrong. I knew that this was a bad situation and that I had to find some way of getting out of it. They asked for the time, and my friend pulled out his cell phone. At that moment, I knew they were going to try and take his phone, either through intimidation or through force. After a while, the two guys left, and I told my friend how I felt and for him to be ready. They came back a few minutes later, one with a hand in his jacket like he was holding a gun. I began asking God then to help me through this and to give me the ability to do whatever I had to do to get out of this situation. They began talking and saying how easy it is to shoot someone. I stood there and began looking around for help. I saw a woman sitting across from us, and I made eye contact with her. I tried really hard to show her this situation through my eyes and hoped that she would do something. The train slowly rolled to my stop, 2 stops before my friend got off. I had to decide whether I would get off the train and run for it or stay with my friend and help him. I remembered that even if I was okay, that was not enough. I had to try and help others who weren't okay. I stayed on the train with my friend. Meanwhile, the 2 guys were still standing there trying to intimidate us. One still had his hand in his jacket. We rolled up to the final stop. I was wondering what was going to happen next. I looked at the same lady who was sitting across from us. She got up, pushed my friend behind her and me, and said sternly, "You two should leave now." We left the train and didn't go back. I was so relieved that nothing happened and that we were fine. I realized that there was no easy way to get away from violence. I needed to find a dependable way to find peace and connect with God in this hectic and violent world. Now I'm a little bit older, and I can find peace in meeting for worship. I'm still very active in anti-gun violence and anti-violence in Philadelphia. When I do feel overwhelmed by all the violence, I try to center myself and connect with God and find the peace. I realize that there is peace in my home, peace in the streets, and sometimes peace in a noisy Quaker meeting house. Yeah, it's there. We just have to find it. And when we do find it, when we all find it, no one will have to solve their problems with violence anymore.